Good morning, friends. Today I'd like to take you to John chapter 6, verses 60 to 66. We're going to this passage because on Sunday, when we read from Luke 14, we saw that Jesus was addressing a large crowd of people with some exceedingly difficult words. He was really putting it right to the people that they had a hard choice to make, and that choice would have a significant effect on their lives. There'd be big-time consequences associated with what they chose. And in John 6, we see a similar thing happening. Because prior to verse 60, our Lord spoke to the people about how he was the true manna from heaven, that he was, and of course is, the bread of life. And then he made an even more remarkable statement in verse 53 by saying, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you." Now, when we think of hard sayings, that is a hard saying. And quite literally, Jesus' disciples respond with the very same thought. Picking the narrative up in verse 60, we read, "When many of his disciples heard it, they said, 'This is a hard saying. Who can listen to it?' But Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were grumbling about this, said to them, 'Do you take offense at this? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh is no help at all. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. But there are some of you who do not believe.' For Jesus knew from the beginning who those were who did not believe, and who it was who would betray him. And he said, 'This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted him by the Father.' After this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him." Now, there's far more here than we can get to today, but for right now, I just want to focus on the part where it says that Jesus knew from the beginning who those were who did not believe and who it was who would betray him, and combine that with the result of his teaching being that many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. And my question is, do you think Jesus was surprised when many of those people who had physically been following him from place to place decided now to go their own way as a result of his teaching? And I think the answer is clearly yes, of course he knew that would happen. But he taught those hard truths anyway. Why? Because he knew who belonged to him and he knew who didn't. And he was willing to separate those out who did not belong to him. And we're going to come back to this passage over the next few days, but for right now, the application in front of us is simply one of contemplation. Just want to think on this, mull this over, let it percolate until tomorrow, and we'll pick it up again. Because we often want to invite everyone in to join us, whether it be in church service or a general Christian fellowship, whatever it might be. And from a certain perspective and for certain purposes, that's of course legitimate to invite people. But here we have Jesus willingly and purposefully teaching the truth, even though he knows that it will cause people, it will even drive people to abandon him. To put it in terms we're more familiar with, he is willing to teach the truth, even though he knew it would make people angry and that they would leave the church and not come back. And Jesus was okay with that. Why was Jesus okay with that? Was he not concerned about getting as many people as possible to follow him? Did he not want as many people as possible to hear his teaching? Well, we're going to explore that more in the days to come, but I think that as a start, Jesus is giving us an example of the proper priority. And the proper priority does not have attendance at the top of the list. It's not about numbers of followers, it's about truth. The proper priority for Christian living and just life in general is about God's truth over and above all else. And when that is the priority, then we speak the truth lovingly, but we speak it even when it is hard truth. And then we can have all the more confidence that those who remain truly do belong. My friends, have a good and godly day. And if the Lord wills, I will see you tomorrow.